Welcome to the Westport Library. Today's program will begin momentarily. Supported by Verso Studios, created locally and shared with the world.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Carrie, and I am the part of the programming team here at the library. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's event, Dreaming of Home, a keynote and community conversation on immigrant justice. A huge welcome to those familiar faces who are returning to the library for tonight's event, as well as to those of you who are new to our library. I'd also like to share that we are joined by two amazing interpreters tonight, Alejandra and Marcelo, who will be providing language support tonight. So thank you to you both. It is also my absolute pleasure to introduce Barbara Lopez, the Executive Director of Make the Road Connecticut, our community partner organization tonight, and our neighbor right up the road in Bridgeport, who have been doing integral work in our state, guided by the mission of envisioning a Connecticut where every person, regardless of immigration status, race, or income, has access to affordable housing, quality education, fair wages, and health care. Barbara Lopez's story is a powerful example of visionary leadership rooted in community and social justice. Raised by Guatemalan parents, she has spent over a decade organizing healthcare, home care, and childcare workers to secure better wages and working conditions. In 2015, she co-founded Make the Road Connecticut, an intergenerational, member-led, community-based organization working to build power in immigrant, Latin, and working-class communities in Connecticut to achieve dignity and justice. Make the Road does this through community organizing, transformative education, policy, innovation, and survival services. In 2018, Barbara became its first Latina and feminist executive director. Under her leadership, the organization has built a strong foundation, cultivated a powerful base, and driven major policy and social changes for immigrants in Connecticut. Barbara's impact goes beyond outcomes. She inspires collective power and redefines resistance as an act of love, joy, and care, all while striving for lasting systemic change. Please join me in welcoming Barbara to the Westport Library stage.
Good evening, very good looking crowd. Thank you for being here today. So I am truly touched that you all came here tonight to celebrate our first event of many. Make the Road Connecticut is celebrating 10 years. So it's also my birthday today, so thank you, 10 years, 10 years. I am very excited to be here because, as Carrie shared, I was one of the co-founding organizers, and I know firsthand the hard work it takes to build an idea, to build the seed, to build from leaders and community came before us, right? And there's a lot of folks from our community here today that began with us in those early days when it was all really just a dream. Today, I'm very excited that Cristina Jiménez, and we're gonna get to know Cristina and hear her story, has joined us today. Cristina is one of the co-founder of United We Dream, an organization that has over 1 million members, 25 organizing hubs around the country. And similar to Make the Road Connecticut, United We Dream got started with a group of committed people having conversations, having meetings, and dreaming about building power for the working class immigrant people. And today we'll reflect on what that history, the current reality, and any potential of how we can continue to fight for an equitable future. I also do want to take a moment to acknowledge that tonight we're doing this gathering with a big significance. We're having this conversation when our community is under attack, our immigrant community is under attack. And as some of you may know, or hope that you all are aware, that there is a rise in ICE activity and increased policing here in Connecticut across our different cities and towns, particularly in like large immigrant populations. Our immigrant community is being forced to navigate daily life in the midst of this administration's tension and fear. But, you know, families are still being resilient and going outside and living their livelihoods as much as they can. And while we think that Connecticut, and it is a blue state and it is safe, mostly, in many ways, I highly encourage you, all of you tonight, to think about and really reflect about how safe or for whom it's safe, for who is Connecticut safe, right? So the heart of tonight is safety is not for everyone. And I urge all of us to think about how we can work together as this community here in Westport. And, you know, Bridgeport is your neighboring town, but we have Danbury neighboring you as well, and how you all can be supportive of communities across Connecticut. Regardless of race, class, and immigration status. So today we have our powerful Cristina Jiménez is joining us, and we also have our Make the Road Connecticut leaders that you will also be learning from. And I'm gonna share their bios, and they're gonna come up, and then we're gonna start the conversation. So Aracelis began her journey with Make the Road Connecticut back in 2015. And since then, she has become a powerful force for equity and parent leadership. As a devoted mother of 6, she has blossomed into a fierce advocate, demanding interpretation services at critical school meetings and ensuring every parent has a seat at the table. Aracelis was one of many courageous parent leaders whose voices helped pass the Parent Bill of Rights legislation here in Connecticut in 2022, and she did that by bravely sharing her story. And today, she supports by empowering new parents that come into our space and any newly arrived folks in our state. Aranza is our youth power leader. Aranza gave to Make the Road in 2018 when she was 8 years old. Aranza came with her mom. Her mom came to our space looking for support. And at a tender age of 8, Aranza was very supportive of her mom, but she's also very curious and learning and wanted to be part of our Youth Power Committee. And our Youth Power Committee's age is 13. So she had to wait. She was patient. She waited. And when she turned 13, she became part of the Youth Power Committee. It has been one of our dedicated youth leaders who has been advocating for more resources in the Bridgeport Public School District. And as well, she has led the Student Success Center campaign here in Bridgeport to advocate for resources for students within the schools, for example, for college access. So that's who Aranza is. So I want you all to give all 3 of them a very warm welcome to the stage. So if you all can please join me. And a reminder, we have interpretation. We're doing simultaneous interpretation. So we'll try to speak slowly and clearly so our folks in the audience and on the panel can engage equitably in the conversation. All right, this is exciting. So as you all know, we're here as part of a kickoff, but I really am excited to celebrate Dreaming of Home with Cristina. She is so powerful, and I've known Cristina, from afar for many years, and I've admired her work. And then when I read her book, I'm like, oh my God, I get to talk to her on Thursday. So excited. So Cristina, Dreaming of Home is both an intimate and expansive story. When did you first know home was the central thread you wanted to write about? And what does the word mean to you today?
Well, first of all, congratulations. And I'm so honored to be celebrating make the Road Connecticut's 10 years of work, and so grateful for all of the Westport Library community and all of you to be here. I am a community organizer, partly because of my own experience growing up undocumented. It was finding other people who share their stories, who were organizing and activating their communities, that helped me find my own voice. So I never thought myself as a writer. I like to write, and now, in the process of writing the book, I remember that I used to write poems in high school. But that kind of experience had sort of somehow got buried in my mind. And I didn't really have a dream or a goal of writing a book. But how did this come about? I want to take you back to 2016. I was the executive director of United We Dream. And like many communities, we have been working to mobilize our communities to participate in that election. And on election night, we, like many communities, gather to watch on the news the results of the election. And young people from across the country had done countless of canvassing hours, talking to voters and volunteering. So we were tired, but we were hopeful. And we knew that our lives and the lives of our communities were at stake. And when the results of the election were announced, it was really late in the evening, I froze. I froze with a lot of fear. I was terrified for what was about to come, because the person that had committed to deport immigrants, to separate people from their families, that had talked about me and other immigrants as animals and as rapists, that person got elected. And I was so overtaken by fear that even though we had a plan of what to do in that moment to support our communities, I couldn't. And I remember my mom coming up to me and in tears asking me, ¿Qué vamos a hacer? What are we gonna do? And I felt that I couldn't guarantee her that we will be okay. My parents were undocumented still back then. And the reason why I take you or bring you with me to that evening is because what happened next and the years under the first administration was incredible, courageous solidarity work. I experienced Japanese Americans, indigenous folks, Black Americans, white folks, people from all kinds of backgrounds coming together to say, we are going to protect and defend immigrant communities. And when we may remember the family separation of 2018, I remember being in rooms and in rallies and in marches with people from all walks of life, just like this room. And that's how we made it. And together and stronger and with more people feeling connected to each other and reminding each other that our humanity and our connection and our love for life and love for human life and for communities was stronger than what we were experiencing, the attacks and the hate. And so I definitely thought that it was important for people to know that story. Not just my undocumented journey, which is a journey of fear and moving from fear to a place of power, but also from a place of feeling homeless. I was a young person that fled with my family from Ecuador seeking a better life here. And when you're so young and you lose everything that you thought was home, you come to a new place and it's so hard to feel like you belong. But I found home in community, and I was reminded that even in the toughest moments, which up until that time in 2016 through those first 4 years of that administration were the toughest that I had experienced in my own journey, I was reminded of the power of people coming together. And so I wrote Dreaming of Home to be a guide for all of us to remind ourselves that we have a voice, that we have power individually and more power collectively to create change, and that even in the toughest moments, if we have each other, we can get through it.
I definitely felt that. I hear a lot of your story, and we're going to hear from Aranza and Aracelis in a few. I think that one of the things that would be helpful for us to understand is what were the earliest memories when you were writing your book of when you came to New York? What did you do to remember those earlier memories of your experience? Because I'm assuming it was overwhelming and everything was new. And how did you connect to those earliest memories?
I never thought that there would be so many parallels in some way. Today, it's very different. The conditions of fear and division are so much more intense. But I was a senior in high school, and I was undocumented and very afraid and very ashamed. And, for those of you who have started reading the book or are going through it or will go through it, you will see this journey of transformation, of being really afraid and then finding power and shedding that fear in community with other young people, meeting each other, and then not feeling like I was the only one. But then also seeing how people came together to fight deportations. When 9/11, the attacks that happened in September 11, took place, right after, there was a lot of attacks on Muslim and immigrant communities. And I remember for the first time, when that happened, the fear of deportation was always over me as an undocumented person, and that's a fear that many of us live with every day. But when you start seeing ICE agents in your community, and then people in your community disappearing, which was happening after 9/11, and for a little bit of context, I grew up in Queens, in a very immigrant neighborhood, in one of the largest communities of Southeast Asian communities in Jackson Heights, Queens. And which that meant that we had a lot of neighbors that were from Muslim communities, and many of them were disappearing. And I remember feeling my family and I could be next. So I share that because in so many ways, I know so many people are feeling that same terror and fear right now as we are gathering here. But what I also want to share, that it's an important parallel of the moment, and to your point of how did you remember all these things? I had to go back to my yearbook. I read the poems and the letters that all of us as students wrote about how the terrorist attacks impacted our lives, and how many of my friends who were of Muslim background were so afraid and were also so much the target of bullying in school. But I was also reminded that it was a community, that there was a community there. And I was reminded of the first person I met, Marie Gonzalez, who was an undocumented young person, that because of the policies that changed in response to 9/11, her family ended up being in deportation, and herself. And she's the first young person that I see sharing her story and advocating for her family to have the right to due process and to be able to stay. I'm 19. And I mentioned Marie because Marie was one of the first, almost I think of it as seeds. There were seeds of courage that Marie and other young people, and my husband is here, Walter, who I also met in that group of pioneer young people that were sharing their stories and advocating to stop deportations. And the parallel that I want to bring to today is that it was those very difficult conditions of high level of fear, of deportation, of many states passing policies to remove rights from undocumented communities to have the right to drive, the right to go to school. We saw some of the most, at the time, I will say like racist policies in Arizona when it was like, show me your papers. If you are black or brown, you are going to be racially profiled and arrested and deported. And what we see today, it's just happening at a greater scale. But what's important about it is that it was also in that moment that a new movement was born. A movement of young people, of undocumented people and their allies that said, this is not okay, and we are going to come together to fight back and to fight for justice and protect communities. And the immigrant youth movement was born in that moment. And we know the many victories and the kind of transformational change that this movement has brought. And so today I feel like we face also the challenge, much greater, but there's also the opportunity.
I really love that, and it really hits home. When I was reading the book, one of the things that really resonated with me is I could hear your story so powerfully. Like you shaped it, like your youth and your activism, and how you got to this country, and how you navigated all the different systems that weren't designed for immigrant, Latinx, brown folks to navigate, right? And in that reading the book, I'm like, because I was excited to do this panel. I'm like, oh my God, how am I gonna do it? I was like, oh my God, duh. We have the membership, and your story is powerful and inspiring, but it reminded me a lot of the stories that we hear coming in and out of our office at Make the Road here in Bridgeport and in Hartford, right? And I was like, oh my God, this reminds me of Aranza. This reminds me of Araceli's story, right? Because you talked about your tias, your tío, your dad, your papi, your mommy, right? And I hear them, your mom and your dad and your uncles coming, they talk about their family all the time and how intergenerational folks walk into our space. So that's why I was like, this is a perfect opportunity to uplift our leaders and engage in conversation so they can share the parallel that the stories are still, their experiences are still very much alive today. So I wanted to kick it off to Aranza first. And Aranza, can you share a little bit about what inspired you to be part of the community?
Hi, my name is Aranza. How I joined the community, it was because of my mom. She became a member of Make the Road in 2018, and since I was little, I just been with her through her meetings, and I saw a lot of work that she has done, and I think that just sparked my interest in activism or just any issues that are happening. So when time came and I was able to join the Youth Power Community, I did, because I just mainly wanted to see change done around me in the educational system and many other issues. So, yeah.
Thank you, Aranza.
No sé nada, no se escucha nada.
Can we get another interpretation set, please? Here comes Stefan. Thank you, Stefan. Testing? No. Testing? Is this better?
No escucho nada, al menos si hablan.
Okay, so the question for, is it better?
Nada, no escucho nada. ¿No escucha? No, no se escucha. No, no.
Okay, so I think the system's not working. Okay.
Perdón.
So we're going to do continuous interpretation. So I'm going to say something, and then other interpreter's going to say something while we figure out the equipment. This question's for you, Aracelis. What inspired you to be active in your community?
¿Qué la inspiró para ser activa en su comunidad?
Buenas tardes a todos y a todas.
Good evening to everybody.
Me inspiró para poder entender el sistema educativo,
I got inspired to understand the educational system.
porque no era fácil
It was
ir a
not
las
easy
escuelas
at school
y poder entender lo que ellos me estaban diciendo.
and to be able to understand what they were telling me.
Y todo lo que me mandaban era en inglés y no podía entender qué era lo que ellos querían decirme.
And everything they sent was in English, and I couldn't understand what they were trying to tell me.
Lo bueno que encontré a Bárbara un día
The good thing is that I found Barbara one day,
y le agradezco mucho que ese día pudimos coincidir y por eso hoy estoy aquí.
and I thank her very much because we were able to coincide that day, and that's the reason why I'm here today.
Oh, thank you. I think one of the things that really resonated in your book that reminded me a lot of the youth and the parents is that you talk about your mother's courage throughout the book. How did writing these chapters change or deepen your understanding of her choices?
You know, I think we often talk about immigration not as story of love. And through telling the story of not only my mom, but many courageous parents that do so much, sacrifice so much, and take so many risks to give a better life to their kids, that act of, leaving everything that you have behind and come to a new place, I think about it like she was in her early 30s. She was so brave. But it was rooted in love. And I thought for me it was really important to use the opportunity of the long form. When we're telling stories, the book allows us to spend a little bit more time with story to realize that just like my mother, there are many other parents that have been really courageous and migrated seeking a better life and safety for their families, and that was out of a place of love. And it was also people, Americans from all walks of life, that made the story of my family, now that I'm a mother, that made my story possible. Walter and I started organizing together. And we were friends at the time, and I tell in the story in the book that we were both undocumented. And so we actually were very much like, we cannot date. Even though a lot of our friends were like, oh, you all, seem so, like, you connect very well, you should date. And we were like, no, we can't do that. Why? Because when you are undocumented, knowing that the other person is undocumented too, you will be making a choice to potentially fall in love with someone that you could lose the next day to deportation. And so making that choice of taking that risk was really hard. And so we avoided it. And so, we pretended that the feelings weren't there. But what ended up happening is that Walter was planning a meeting of undocumented young people in Chicago, where we were coming together in 2007 to advocate for policy changes in Congress and advocating for the DREAM Act, which was a policy that would provide undocumented young people a pathway to legalization and citizenship. And while he was on the Amtrak train, the train was stopped at 3 a.m, and Border Patrol agents came into the train and asked him and other men of color in the car whether they were citizens or not. And when they said no, they were arrested and taken to a jail in upstate New York. And so I get the call early in the morning that Walter, it's detained. And the feeling that I may not see Walter again, it's what, again, like the love, right? Like I want to come back to that. The love that we had for each other really revealed things for both of us about the feelings that we have for each other. But it was, again, people, teachers, faith leaders, people in the community that didn't even know Walter that came together to advocate for him to be released. And after 5 days that he was in jail, we were able to get him out. So I always think about that story because the same courage that I experienced with my mom is also the courage that I saw and that I witnessed and that I experienced with people that didn't even know me, didn't even know Walter, who fought for him to be released. And the story of my family, even me being able to now be a mother and we have a 3-year-old, that story is possible because of that love that led people to fight for his release and to fight for justice. So courage goes with love, and for me, it was an opportunity to highlight how immigration is a love story, too.
I really love that, and something in your story reminded me, Aracelis, you were key, instrumental in passing the Parent Bill of Rights. And it took a lot of courage and love to share your story at the Capitol, our state Capitol. Can you share how you were able to do that and why you bravely shared your story, similar like Cristina's mom, at the state Capitol to pass this bill?
No fue fácil,
It was not easy,
pero me armé de valor
but I found the courage,
y dije que también tenía que apoyar, que
And I-
yo en la casa
and I said to myself that I needed
no iba a
support,
hacer la diferencia.
that if I stayed at home, I would not make any difference.
Y mis hijos estaban bien pequeñitos
And my children were very little,
y estaban orgullosos
and they were proud
de representar a muchos niños que no estaban ahí.
to represent many children who were not there.
Pero gracias a Dios, ahora mismo, todos los que estamos aquí, estamos escuchando a otros padres
Thank God, everybody who's here, we're listening to other parents,
y nos damos cuenta que no estamos solos,
and we realize that we are not alone,
que tenemos muchas personas que nos apoyan.
that we have many people who support us.
Y una de esas es Se Hace Camino de Connecticut.
And one of them is Make the Path in Connecticut.
Gracias, Aracelis. Aranza, you're part of our very strong Youth Power Committee. Is there moments in that committee where you've learned from other peers or even yourself of how you all are coming together to advocate for yourselves, but also support your family, like your mom and your dad and your aunts and your uncles? Is there moments where you all have to say, hey, we have to step up, or hey, we have to share our stories?
Yeah, there is definitely moments, especially when my peers start talking about their experiences, about their schools and what is happening with the educational system. That's when we come together and we start sharing our stories, and that's where we start planning what changes we want to see in the future and how are we gonna make that happen.
I think something that has been on everybody's mind in coming together and see what happens. I think, Cristina, I would like for you to give your perspective how, and then I'll ask our leaders here in the Connecticut perspective, but how are federal immigration policies, you're doing your book tour and you're having different conversations with different communities. What is like the top lines that you're hearing about immigration being part of those conversations throughout your book tour?
What has been really moving is to go across the country, and I've been in over 10 cities now. It's to see the amount of people that are coming and showing up in conversations like this with a lot of interest to find out how they can be helpful in their community, how they can take action, how they can be part of creating change in this moment. And to literally support and defend and protect immigrant communities. I have to say that I myself was really afraid to go out on this tour because of just how bad things are. Like, I don't think that we should ignore or try to hide the level of terror. ICE agents in our streets, in our schools, showing up at graduations, showing up to try to kidnap first graders, separating families, arresting people from the Home Depot to the park to after school drop-offs. And so what I hear is a lot of fear. I remember going to Salt Lake City a couple of weeks back. The day before our book event, they had raided the library right across where our book event was going to take place. And so a lot of people in the community didn't want to come to the book event because they were afraid. But what also happened, which always fills me with hope, Barbara, is that there were people in the community that volunteered to pick up immigrant families, take them to the event, and drive them back. And many of them showed up and said, my family member or my friend couldn't come, but I want to get a book signed for them, because they were afraid to be here. So I named this to share just like, the level of fear is very real. And I think we should all be afraid, even if we're not immigrants. When we see policies that are purely just racially profiling, we've seen many stories and heard many stories in the news of people who look like me and are U.S. citizens and have been born here, and they're still being arrested and have been detained and are already in detention, in jails. I think when you see international students that have used their right to speak their perspective and getting arrested and getting deported to other countries, I think that starts really raising the alarm that anyone could be next. So I do think that, the fear is very real. But what I always say, and I was in Los Angeles right before everything that happened there that we saw in the news. What was also true, and I was meeting with many journalists in the community, what they were also saying is the importance of us sharing the stories that are also lifting up how the communities are coming together to resist what's happening and to protect communities. And so while there's a lot of fear, there's also the stories of the neighbors that are literally doing grocery shopping for their immigrant neighbors. There are the neighbors or friends or family members or community members that are going with immigrants to their court hearings as they are in their legal process of getting their cases approved. And there are also people that are rallying and doing walkouts from their schools and are taking action outside of detention facilities to advocate for the release of their neighbors and family members. So both are true. And I talk about in my book, this very, and I get always emotional here. There's a contradiction that I live with that I think many people may resonate with right now, which is that this place is home. This country is home for me. And at the same time, it's been really hard since I was a young person to feel that the place that I consider home does not want me. And to see how people voted, or to see what people said, or to see elected officials saying things about people that look like me, or people who have my experience. And those two are true. But in writing this book, Barbara, what I was reminded, and this concept of home, is that both are true in this country, the good and the bad. And what's most important is that home, more than a place, is a practice that we all can create for each other. What does it make you feel like home? Safety, warmth, belonging. And regardless of where we are, we can create that with each other. So what is also true is the possible that we can make happen in this country. And to me, that America, the possible, is the one that we can all practice by coming together to create change. And I truly believe that that is possible.
I'm going to ask one more question to center us here in Connecticut, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A. I hope that you all have some questions for our folks. Aracelis, can you give the perspective? I know that the parent committee and our membership across Make the Road fought endlessly this legislative session that just ended in June to push forward Husky for All, Just Cause, and other bills. One that you all were fighting for is the right to vote. What do you think keeps community inspired and showing up here in Connecticut, even in the hardest moments where we're not able to pass things?
¿Puedes repetir otra vez? El final. Que lo repita.
What do you think keeps community inspired to keep showing up in the hardest moments?
Nosotros tenemos que seguir luchando
We have to keep fighting.
porque no podemos darnos rendidos.
We can't give up.
Esta lucha no termina.
This fight is not over.
Tenemos que siempre ver hasta el frente.
We have to keep looking forward.
Aunque tengamos barreras,
Even though we have challenges,
debemos luchar.
we have to keep fighting.
Yes, sí se puede. Gracias, Aracelis. Aranza, what is the message for the community here in Westport that you want them to take away that the youth fight for in Bridgeport or have fought for really hard here in the Bridgeport School District? What do you want them to know?
I want them to know that when we start campaign again, we will see a lot of changes being done. And even though the process may be slow, like we will see it, and it would not just show up in Bridgeport. Like we hope to expand it, and then those changes can be seen in other cities and other schools. And yeah, I just hope that me as a student, I hope to see other students like get good opportunities and just have a good educational system.
Thank you, Aranza. And we want to keep the conversation going, so do we have a couple folks that have any questions?
Hi, folks. If I could ask if you have a question, if you could line up here at the mic just so we can capture your question for the recording. And also, I would just like to request if we could just have one question per person. That would be great. And it is going to be interpreted as well, so if you could just speak slowly and clearly. Thank you so much.
I can't ask for 20.
Well, maybe.
Hello, good evening. So my question is, how do you reach people who don't go to these events? Many people go to these events, but many people don't. They see what they see on Fox News. They see what they think they see, but they don't know the truth of what you guys are doing. So how do you reach those kinds of people?
Do you want to kick us off, Cristina, and then we can kind of give some perspective from Connecticut?
I feel like in many ways I want to say, like, question back to you, because all of us have relationships, friends and communities and networks. And, what I will say is that doing this work for over 20 years now of working in communities, one big learning that I hold so dear now is to remind ourselves that people are emotional beings first. We're about the heart. And the heart is missing so much in the conversation right now and in our lives. And so the way that we get to people's hearts, it's by building relationships with one another. And we could do that with our neighbors, and we can do that also online. Let's be real about that. We can do that also there. But we can also do that by talking to people in our places of faith, in our schools. So I think that the antidote to this moment, to your question that, so many people may be absorbing so many messages from different things that they may watch and see in the media, is that the human connection and relationship is a lot more powerful than that. And the invitation, I think, of your question is that we can all do that with each other. So, one thing that I want to offer, and I know that there's going to be more conversations about what we can do, all of you in your chairs have postcards that you can take with you. And I thought about these postcards as part of our book tour of Dreaming of Home because of the power of human connection. So I invite you to take these postcards to share about this event with people in your community, in your networks of friends and family members, and to also share it with an immigrant in your life. It can be the person at school, it can be the person that does your care work at home, and let them know that you see them as the human beings that they are, and that you care about them. So the postcards are for you to share with your community and to share with your network of friends. And I will say that, Make the Road Connecticut is doing that here. Like, they're door knocking in communities, they're holding events, but you can also do that as well in your own community.
Thank you.
My question is for Aranza. So as an educator, I'm curious as to what specific changes you sought in your school.
So our campaign is more focused on the schools in Bridgeport, but I go to a technical school in Milford. So to be honest, I will not really be able to answer your question, but some changes that I can see is us getting better resources, but even through that, I know that we need more funding to get what exactly we need and just to be ready for college or just other things in life. So yeah, we need more.
Hi, thank you so much for this beautiful event. My daughter was born down the road in Bridgeport, and I am raising her here in this very beautiful, leafy area. And I come from an urban center that was very diverse, and my question, and my constant daily question, is how do I raise my daughter to be compassionate and to how can we as a small family make change and not live in our little green bubble when there is so much fear and suffering 15 minutes away?
I'll kick it off to Connecticut, and you can add some. I think that is a great question, and I'm excited. Part of why I'm excited to be here, we partner with the Westport Library, the UU congregations in the back, right? And one of the things that we've been for 10 years in Bridgeport and Hartford, and things are hard, right? And I think one of the things that we have worked really hard in is like naming the hard thing, which is like Bridgeport is highly immigrant, highly brown, highly black. And like Aranza shared, like we were fighting for peanuts in these districts, right? But I think one of the things that gives us hope, going back to the conversation, is building these relationships with the towns that can do more, right? They hold a lot of resources and power, and your voices matter so much, right? So I think there's a piece around how can you all be great allies, and there is a piece around like how do you put yourself on the line, right? Is it being part of rapid response networks? That could mean like you accompany someone to a criminal or civil court, or bring them to their ICE check-in, right? And we have been engaging. We did a wonderful training with the UU Church in making sure that our allies are good allies when they show up, right? And they understand how to support the community. There's also, you can show up to our space, right? Our space is have committees that engage in conversations and like the foster campaigns, and there's a bunch of kids running around, and how can you all lend your voice in talking to your members of Congress, for example, our delegation could be better on immigration, right? Like if you all put those phone calls in addition to our conversations, it makes a big difference, right? So can you all show up in that way, or show up in our space, or just like give resources, however you all are able to give resources, right? Make the Road is one of the communities, but there's a lot of great organizations across the state that are doing fantastic work, right? So I think that you being here is a great start, and figuring out how we can connect with you and build that allyship with you, and how you can bring your friends to like build a stronger allyship with our folks here in Connecticut. But do you want to take like the national perspective?
I think, it works. I just want to say first, like, as a mom, I feel you so much. Like, I think about this every day. So thank you for sharing that. And I think that that's in the mind of so many of us, especially in this environment that we're in. And I will say that the thing that I, at least I'm taking for myself as a mom too, is what is my son learning about me by what I'm doing and what I'm saying and where I'm investing my time and what he gets to experience. And I think that as Barbara was saying, like, what a great opportunity, for your child to think 20 years down the line, and to think about, in this very hard moment in the country's history, this is what I remember my mom doing. This is what I remember my mom sharing. These are the spaces that I remember joining. So whether that is a community organization or volunteering for your local community, or a place where people congregate, based on faith, I think volunteering is so meaningful, even if we can start there. Or even if we can start by sharing books and stories together, which is why I thought about the book as a strategy or as a tool to help us build community and share story. So I will just share that as a mom too, and that you have the opportunity here in organizations like Make the Road Connecticut, and many others in the state. I know Connecticut Students for a Dream that works with young people too, and many others where kids can be part of a community and doing meaningful work to contribute to it.
Thank you.
Hi. The scariest thing I heard tonight, Cristina, when you describe yourself as undocumented. I don't know if that's your current status or not, but to me it makes no difference. You're here. But I want to make a comment observation for comment by anybody on the panel. should a distinction be made between immigration into the United States, that is, the right to enter the country, versus the right to stay in the country once you're here? Because in my opinion, there is a difference, and I want to hear if you have any opinions on that.
Can you repeat the last part of your
Sure.
question?
Should a distinction be made between those who want to enter the country, this country, versus those who are in this country as immigrants? In other words, somebody who wants to enter the United States but doesn't live in the United States right now, and somebody who might have come here undocumented, if you will, and is now here. And I want to have your observations or your comments on whether a distinction should be made between those two situations, entering and staying.
So, I was sharing my story of growing up undocumented. Now I'm a naturalized citizen, and, more details in the story, in the book, right, for how that journey happens. But I will say that, much of what we are seeing right now, if we learn about the history of how immigration policy was created in this country, in our immigration system, it is true. And I tell a little bit about this history because I think it's so important for us to know how we ended up being in this situation on immigration and immigrants. Before the 1920s, technically we had an open border policy as a country. By that I mean people could come, people could apply to stay, people could leave, people could return. And it wasn't until the 1920s that we have the first policy, the REAT Act, that starts creating a visa system and a quota system that favored people from Northwestern European countries. And the reason that I named that is that from the root, the immigration system that we have was designed in a very unjust way, with the favoritism to what at the time in the eugenics conversations were immigrants that were considered of a better race. And so then if we know that about sort of where we come from in this set of policies that now make our immigration system, it's not so hard to now understand why we have the situation that we have. So I think that there is something that in immigrant communities we have known for a really long time, which is that the system is unjust, and it punishes and it dehumanizes people. And it doesn't actually have legal avenues for people to come, for people to be able to stay with their families. And if you look at the history, in fact, we have created, through our policies, an undocumented population. So when you raise the question of people coming, people staying, I think that our system has, by design, it's now working on all of those fronts, on how people can come here with a process and legally, and how people could stay here. But the solution that we are seeing put forward right now is mass raids and mass deportation and mass family separation. And I think what we are seeing in the polling, in the conversation, is that Americans don't support that. But then what's the solution, right? So there needs to be a solution for what you're saying. And I do think that it's about policy changes that center justice, that center democratic values and human rights, as well as what works for the country in terms of trade, economy, et cetera. But I think that what we have to work towards is to actually engage in that robust conversation about the kind of policy change that we need.
Thank you, Cristina. So I appreciate, I know that we have been sitting here for a little bit, and I would love this conversation to keep going, but I really want to, we're close to the end of the program. I really want to make sure that I get, the call to action out there for all of you, because I'm sure all of you are wanting to get involved. So the first thing they all should do is check out the Make the Road table in the back, and there's like various ways that you all can get involved with us or learn more. Secondly, I know that you all saw postcards on your tables. We have plenty. So if you want to take a few of those and write a postcard out to Governor Lamont. Our Husky for All Coalition is doing a big push right now, and we're happy to share in the back what the Husky for All Coalition is. They're community-based organizations, labor, faith groups, but they all want to send a message to Governor Lamont to make sure that he protects or considers protecting our immigrant families' data, and also to maintain Husky for All coverage for undocumented children up to the age of 15 and pregnant women. We have fought really hard for that legislation to pass. A lot of the folks on this stage have fought really hard for that. So if you can please use that postcard to send a message to Governor Lamont, we'll collect them in the back, or you can mail it yourself. Finally, if you haven't bought your book, they're over there by where the questions were being asked, and Cristina's going to do her book signing, and I encourage you all to buy it. It's really great. I'm only 2 chapters away to being done, almost there, and it's been it's been a really wonderful book. Finally, I want to thank the Westport Library for hosting this event. This is a really fantastic event. I really hope that this can be a first conversation of many. Our great partners, the Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Westport, they have been fantastic. Yes, a big round of applause and welcoming to us. The Make the Road Connecticut team, who worked flawlessly hard to make this event happen. Big shout out to them. Last but not least, because this is our 10th year celebration, but we also want to celebrate and keep the dream and the hope and the courage at the center of who we are. We want to, of course, thank our fiercest Aracelis and Aranza for their hard work. And we want to send off Cristina with a little gift of remembering that Make the Road really believes and really appreciates her leadership and all of those that she does. So a little memory. So our members are going to give that to you, a little gift. Thank you, Karen. And some flowers. Oh, it's a lot. Can we give them a big round of applause, please? Because this takes a lot of courage to share your stories. And then we have a lot of our members in the crowd, so if you can repeat after me. So nuestros miembros, si pueden repetir. El pueblo unido. Yes. Dilo en el microphone. Okay, el pueblo
unido jamás será vencido.
All right, so the people united will never be defeated. That's what it says in Spanish. So the people united will never be defeated. And I hope this is the first of many conversations, and I appreciate all of you for coming out tonight. Thank you. Yes, we'll take one quick picture.